In the Jamaican culture, we have this thing, it's called reasoning. Basically, what it is people gathering around discussing issues that affects everyday lives, everyday people, and the community, and stakeholders in the community. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Stream Dialogue. This is the first episode of Let's Reason. We hope to do this more in a podcast base or, inviting guests to discuss. But, you can join the debate wherever it is, whether it's in the comment section of this video or sending us your thoughts. So, this first episode, we're going to discuss the need for a grassroots Pan African movement, revolution with amongst African people. To piggyback off the previous video we made of, our 5 leaders being summoned and embarrassed. You know, Normally when these things happen, we always wonder, what is the purpose of these deal? And we've realized the need for a grassroots led African, development. So this parasitic exploitation will continue unless the youth of this generation, um, drive this liberation struggle. I believe we're in a third liberation struggle during this time. So when our politicians goes and sign deals, the contents of that deal are never really revealed, except that the population, the people never benefit from that deal. It doesn't matter what the deal is. It doesn't matter what contracts, economic agreement signed. At the end of the day, the people lives never improve, and if it does, just barely. So things like the demand for increase in royalties or increase in percentage of these like mining contracts and so forth, those days are long gone. What we actually need is a total industrial revolution, especially on the continent. As for us in the Caribbean, in the diaspora, more so we are looking to the continent to be strong, to be developed, industrialized. That way, we in the Caribbean we can benefit. We are very small states. We can really stand up to the big bullies and so forth. I know natural resource we have natural resources, but compared to the continent, that's where the true wealth of African people lies, and that's where our destiny lie. So where the this grassroots what this grassroots movement need to push in terms of industrialization. We don't want to see no more digging in the ground of the raw materials. We are demanding, oh, let's give us 20%, 50%. No, what we need is what has to happen, not need. What has to happen is underground transformation. You know, Whatever the resource is, has a full supply chain within that country, within that community, rather than just sending raw materials out, which leads to overproduction of raw materials and underproduction of finished good. What we need is a full production of finished good, and then believe it or not, we will actually export less raw material. So we export less raw material and even export less, earning more, and improving the life of our people. Africa cannot be, African and Africans cannot be viewed as just, supplier of cheap raw materials. So another thing I think this new grassroots movement needs to push and push hard. In the 1960s, 1950s and 60s, our leaders were pushing for more of a you know, political independence, which you can have political independence without economic power. It means nothing. And even economic power, you need something to back it. So this is why we push Pan Africanism. We had African countries in Africa that were, relatively successful. We look at the Libya, we look at Libya with Muammar Gaddafi. This was a pretty successful country, but still, it was destroyed because they weren't united with anyone. It was just a small state who could not defend itself. As soon as it came under pressure, it broke. So what we see in the Sahel is definitely a blueprint for Africa to follow. We hope that the Sahel Confederation will move to a federation and actually expand. I think that is the way forward for us Africans. So what we are demanding is industrialization. This is in agricultural products, processing agricultural products, you know, even building machines on the continent to even process these products. It's time we see in Burkina Faso, uh, tomato processing plants. We need to see that go far beyond and copied in other African states. Those who produce rice, those who produce, you know, things such as cashew. Instead of just exporting the raw cashew, you can produce the cashew. This will create a lot of jobs, you know, even in pharmaceuticals. Most of the medicine that are produced in the West, you can find out that same raw material comes from, you know, the forest, our forests in Africa. So there's a lot of talk when you listen to most most Western officials. They like to talk about Africa's growing population, its young population, and so forth. So what they normally talk about, beside condemning it, is it grows them out. Oh my gosh, all these Africans gonna be in the world. They're gonna be young. Sometimes they it's more in an alarmist tone. They're they're talking about, all these young people are gonna be in Africa. What are we supposed to do? But in most time, in most of their speeches, is most of their, their conferences, it is very revealing what they intend for young people in Africa. This growing population, which is supposed to be the youngest population in the world, which is the youngest population in the world, and which that young population is just gonna go. They're just looking at it as a cheap supply of labor in their countries. So you can see this manifestation in Kenya, where the president of Kenya, instead of bringing economic policy to industrialize his country, to use the natural resources for the people. He's talking about exporting young Kenyans to go and work in Germany, to go and work in the Middle East. So these people, fellow Africans, they will always continue to see us as, workers. They don't see us, they don't believe that we can develop, and they don't think we deserve these raw materials that we have, which we have to prove them wrong. It's time that young and normally there's this we emphasize young people, they emphasize, but young people, really should take charge. Of course, we need our, you know, more seasoned adults to, guide us at times, even though most of the time they can try to save the system, as I would call it. They will always try to save the system because they don't, they are at a certain stage of their life that they don't believe that there can be change. They've a lot of them have lived through through this liberation struggle of the 60s, so they've seen, the worst of neo-colonialism up to today. So they don't think that there's any change. That's why our parents would tell us, go to school, get a good education, which is not a bad thing, but you know, a growing people would always look to the future where technology is growing. We're in a different time now. A lot of us who went to school for different skills, those skills will be literally in the next 2, 3, 4 years, those jobs will be gone. Artificial intelligence will take those jobs. So this new African, liberation struggle not only should have a economic, you know, side to it, but it should also have a industrialization side to it. I know that it sounds like those two go together, but what what are the need? What will be the need in the future, especially that Africa will have, this young population. You know, maybe we will have a deficit of elderly, older people and so forth. So what will we do to we not only keep that population, employed, happy, and so forth. So Africans need to be used and should be used to develop Africa. Rather, a lot of us. I'm from the Caribbean, of course, originally from Africa, but we grew up in the Caribbean. But you can tell our economic and our education system is basically tailored to feed these Western countries. It's either you go to England, you go to Canada, or you go to the United States. If you're from the Caribbean, especially, British colonies, or you go to some country in Europe. But the driver of change within the African world, within Africa, cannot come from these politicians. Let's just make it clear. It will not happen. Growing up, we see parents, family, people going to elections. When it's election time, everybody is driving around. In Jamaica, you have the People's National Party, PNP, Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, which PNP, I guess they mean like power in the hands of the people. JLP, power in the hands of the labor, like people who labor. But they're based, they've been around for what, decades, but it's all the same. Our people are still in poverty. Our people are still ignorant. Our people are still uneducated. And this is the same across the continent. In a country like Cameroon, I'm sure the leader has been. So it's not about democracy versus, well, democracy. In my opinion, I don't think it works for, our people, because the whole point of this opposition politics is just to keep, the population. It's just always conflict. It's just always at each other. This party goes in, nothing changed. This other side comes in, nothing changed. So it's basically, so what we need is just a grassroots movement to develop this continent, whether we like it or not. In the AES, the Confederation, all these leaders came to power through popular uprising. So a lot of us, want to see Ibrahim, want to see a Ibrahim Traore or Assimi Gota or General Chiani in your country, but is your country ready for Assimi Gota or Ibrahim Traore? Let's be honest. Can your country be? Can a Ibrahim Traore be elected in your country? The obvious answer is no. Can your country can your can will a political party allow a Ibrahim Traore to be elected in your to join his party? The answer is no. So what we need is to pave way for these revolutionary leaders. We have to have grassroots movement. This is and when we say a grassroots movement, we're not talking about just putting out political slogans. We're not talking about going out and protesting, you know, against this or that. We need we have to put in concrete, work. I give you an example of that in business. Let's say tourism. How many of us, when we travel, we're seeking out, you know, African business owner, let's say like hotels. Are we going to African hotels? Black, hotels owned by black people. And our black people promoting their hotels. Are they promoting their hotels? So, fellow Africans, this is the first episode of, Let's Reason. It's kind of difficult just talking to a camera. Um, you know, hoping that we stay on topic and stay on line, stay on track. But the new African Renaissance request that you know, we reason. That's the whole point. We just sit and we talk, even though we might disagree. We're not in the debating stuff. That basically get us nowhere. That just cause more division. Everybody put their ideas out there. We all know for sure our destinies are linked. It doesn't matter. All this, divide and rule has to stop. Well, it will not stop, but we know that those who change the course of history and never the majority of people. It's always a few people that change the course of history. So we as African people, our destinies are linked, whether we like it or not. And we're not coming together. We're not pushing Pan Africanism because we love everybody, or we are dreaming of this utopia where African people we all come together and walk around, hold hand. No, we have in we have inherited a amazing continent filled with natural resources, filled with great people, filled with great culture. I mean, in all these cultures, instead of fighting each other, a Yoruba against a Igbo or a Hausa, Fulani, you know, a Akan versus, anyway, just imagine if all this knowledge to come together. How many language is in your country? That mean you have the amount of language. If your country have 200 language, you have 200 ways to say I love you. You have 200 ways to say hello. Therefore, this should be our strength. We in the diaspora, we always say, you know, they say that we're not Africans because we were born in Africa, but because Africa was born in us. So this whole thing of reasoning, we always say this whole thing of reasoning, this thing, Jamaican culture. Where did we get it from? We got it from we brought it from Africa. Our ancestors brought it. This idea of sitting under the tree and resolving issues, talking about discussing, coming up with solution. That's what it is. That is what reasoning. But we're bringing this to a new, to a new era. We have technology, so we sit, we'll talk about issues and way forward for African people. Ladies and gentlemen, I know I've been blabbering for a while, but so much to discuss. It's our first episode, so you know, I salute you all. We say love and respect. We'll meet again. We'll come back again and discuss our next topic. Salute.